It was a stormy night, with the rain pounding heavily against the windows and thunder rumbling in the sky. I was alone at home, curled up on the couch, trying to distract myself with a novel. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the entire room, and I shivered involuntarily. The house was eerily silent, with only the sound of the rain and thunder, accompanied by the occasional howl of the wind, making the night even more unsettling. I lived in a suburban area, surrounded by woods. Normally it was quite peaceful, but every night, especially on stormy nights, there was an inexplicable sense of oppression. Tonight's rain was particularly heavy, as if it intended to drown the entire world. Lightning kept cutting through the night sky, briefly illuminating the surroundings before being quickly swallowed by darkness again. I was engrossed in my book when suddenly the doorbell rang. I sat up abruptly, my heart racing. Who could be visiting on such a night? I peered through the peephole and saw a stranger standing outside, drenched from head to toe, with rainwater streaming down his hair and clothes. He looked very anxious and kept pressing the doorbell. His face was hidden in the shadows, only a vague outline visible. His clothes clung to his body, and water dripped steadily from his hems onto the porch steps. He stood there, looking around nervously, as if searching for something, or perhaps hiding from someone. A sense of unease washed over me. Why was he here at such a late hour and in such weather? I hesitated, feeling uneasy about opening the door. The man seemed to sense my hesitation and started banging on the door frame, the sound sharp and jarring in the stillness of the house. Finally, I decided to open the door, but only a crack, with the safety chain still in place. Through the narrow gap, I saw his eyes, filled with anxiety and fear. He spoke urgently, but the rain was too loud for me to hear clearly. He gestured repeatedly, trying to explain his predicament. I felt a pang of sympathy, but it was quickly overshadowed by a growing sense of unease. Instinctively, I felt uncomfortable, but didn't want to refuse someone in need of help. I told him I couldn't let him in, but offered to make a call for him. At that moment, I saw his expression change to one of anger, his eyes flashing with rage. He began pounding on the door, the force so great that I could feel the door shaking. As time went on, his banging grew more frantic, and he even started to ram the door. I tried to stay calm, but my fear was mounting. Feeling a sense of imminent danger, I grabbed the phone and dialed 911. The dispatcher was calm and professional, assuring me that help was on the way, but it would take a few minutes. I tried to control my fear, pressing my body against the door, hoping it would hold against the force outside. However, the man's ramming became more violent, as if he could break through at any moment. Meanwhile, I heard the sound of breaking glass from a window, and my terror peaked. At that moment, I suddenly realized that the curtains in the living room weren't drawn, and the window faced the hallway leading to the door. Through the reflection in the window, I saw a shadowy figure moving inside the living room. He had already gotten in, and my heart raced even faster, cold sweat dripping down my forehead. I quickly locked all the doors and grabbed a knife from the kitchen to defend myself, trying to stay calm. The footsteps near the broken window indicated that the man had indeed entered. I hid in a corner of the kitchen, holding my breath, trying not to make a sound. The footsteps drew closer, my heart pounding as if it would burst out of my chest. His steps were heavy, each one amplifying my fear. He rummaged through the living room, searching for something. As the footsteps grew nearer, I knew he had reached the kitchen door. I remained crouched in the corner, gripping the knife tightly, listening to his footsteps approaching. He paused at the kitchen door, seemingly hesitant about whether to enter. My breathing became rapid, struggling to stay silent, but my fear was palpable. Just as he was about to discover me, I heard police sirens outside. The man hesitated for a moment, then turned and ran towards the window, trying to escape. The police arrived just in time and apprehended him. When the police took him away, I saw his face, twisted and crazed, filled with despair and anger. I collapsed to the floor, overwhelmed by a mix of relief and lingering fear. Later, the police informed me that the man had escaped from a nearby mental institution and had been wandering in the storm for hours. A chill ran down my spine as I thought about what could have happened if I had let him in. Although the immediate danger had passed, the terror of that night remained etched in my mind. Every stormy night, I couldn't help but recall the stranger's face and the sound of his pounding on my door. The sense of fear and helplessness would never be forgotten. My name is Jenny. I'm 30 years old, and I work as a veterinarian in a quiet town in Washington State. My house is near the town center, surrounded by friendly neighbors, making it a very pleasant place to live. Most of the time, it's very peaceful here, especially at night, when I occasionally hear a neighbor's dog barking or the distant sound of cars passing by. That evening, it was pouring rain outside, with a dark and ominous sky. I was home alone, ready to enjoy a quiet night. I sat on the couch, planning to watch a newly released movie, with the rain and thunder outside creating a unique background noise. I love relaxing on rainy nights, savoring the moment of peace. The movie had just started when I suddenly felt an inexplicable chill. Even though the room was warm, something felt off. I turned to look out the window. Despite the rain blurring my view, I could vaguely see a shadow pass by. Telling myself it was just my imagination, I continued watching the movie, but the uneasy feeling wouldn't go away. A few minutes later, I saw the shadow again, this time more clearly. I immediately got up and walked to the window, trying to see what was going on outside, but saw nothing. I closed the curtains, trying to block out the feeling of being watched. Back on the couch, I couldn't concentrate, my mind replaying the scene over and over. To calm myself down, I decided to make a cup of tea in the kitchen. As I walked through the living room, I heard a faint tapping sound, seemingly coming from the back door. Holding my teacup tightly, I listened carefully. The sound repeated a few times, then stopped. I walked to the back door and looked out through the peephole. It was pitch dark, and I couldn't see anything. At that moment, my phone buzzed. I picked it up and saw an anonymous message that sent chills down my spine. "I can see you." Feeling a wave of cold fear, I tried to stay calm. I checked all the doors and windows, making sure they were locked, and then returned to the living room, waiting for the police to arrive. As I waited, I heard more strange noises. Sometimes a rustling sound outside the windows, sometimes light footsteps on the roof. I tried to convince myself it was just the rain and wind, but my fear kept growing. Every gust of wind that moved the curtains made me look towards the windows, afraid of seeing something terrifying. The sound of the movie faded into the background as I kept glancing at the windows, my anxiety rising. The thunder outside grew louder, nearly drowning out all other sounds, yet I could still hear that unnatural tapping. Suddenly, I felt a chill from behind me, as if someone was standing there. I turned abruptly and saw the curtain blown by the wind, revealing a pair of eyes staring directly at me. I screamed and fell to the floor. Realizing the imminent danger, I immediately called the police. I ran to the bedroom, locked the door, and hid under the bed. I heard the person trying to enter the house, moving around and making noises. I tried to remain as silent as possible, my heartbeat pounding in my ears, as if the world had come to a standstill. The footsteps grew closer, and I heard the doorknob being turned, someone trying to open the bedroom door. Just when I thought the person would break in, the sound of police sirens pierced the silence. I heard the police shouting outside, commanding the person to get down. After a few minutes, the police knocked on the bedroom door, telling me it was safe. I crawled out from under the bed, opened the door, and saw several officers standing there with concerned expressions. The police told me they had arrested a man outside, finding burglary tools on him. As the man was taken away, he muttered incoherently, his eyes filled with madness. The police asked me some questions and checked the house to make sure there were no other threats. However, the police discovered that the man had detailed records of my daily life. He had been watching me for a long time. Knowing this made me feel sick and terrified. The police also found hidden cameras in my garden, pointed at my bedroom window and back door. When the police showed me the cameras, my fear peaked. The man wasn't just trying to break in. He had a deep and disturbing obsession with me. Knowing that all my privacy had been invaded, I felt a suffocating fear. The police took the man away and offered their condolences. They suggested I install security equipment like cameras and alarms. I agreed, planning to buy them the next day. Though the danger was over, that night's terror was deeply etched in my mind. Every nightfall would remind me of those twisted eyes and hidden cameras. The fear and helplessness were unforgettable. I realized that no matter how peaceful life seemed, sudden storms could always appear, and the best I could do was protect myself when they did. I installed cameras and alarms, gradually regaining my sense of security. Yet, on rainy nights, I still felt uneasy. That experience made me more vigilant and aware of the importance of staying calm and courageous in the face of danger. Life is always full of unknowns and challenges, and all I can do is face every stormy night with strength. My name is Mike, I'm 35 years old, and I live in a remote town in New Jersey. My house is on the edge of town, surrounded by dense forests. This town is usually very quiet, perfect for someone like me who enjoys solitude. As a freelancer, my work schedule is very flexible, but the pressure can be intense, so I particularly cherish each relaxing evening. That night, the weather was exceptionally gloomy, with the sky growing darker by the minute, clouds thickening overhead. The lighting inside my house felt especially dim, while outside, the wind began to howl, and branches swayed and rustled in the gusts. I was in the kitchen, cooking dinner, trying to relax through the process of cooking. The thunder was getting closer, and lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the entire room in brief flashes. Such weather was rare in this remote area, bringing an inexplicable sense of oppression and unease. Suddenly, the whole house plunged into darkness. All the lights went out, leaving only the constant flashes of lightning outside. I grabbed a flashlight and tried to locate the circuit breaker, only to discover that the phone line was also down, cutting off all communication with the outside world. In the darkness, I heard strange noises, as if something was crawling behind the walls. Slowly, I made my way to the basement, where the backup power equipment was located. Each step was accompanied by creaking floorboards, making me quicken my pace. As I opened the basement door, the strange noises became clearer, seeming to come from deep within the basement. These sounds were intermittent, sometimes like claws scratching against the walls, sometimes like low, heavy breathing. My palms began to sweat, and my heartbeat accelerated. I turned on the flashlight and cautiously descended the stairs. The basement smelled musty and damp, the light from the flashlight feeble and weak in the darkness. There was a new crack in the wall, as if it had appeared recently. As I approached the crack, I noticed something moving inside. Suddenly, a hand reached out from the crack, and I stumbled back in shock, nearly falling over. The hand quickly withdrew, and a low, heavy breathing emanated from within the wall. Every hair on my body stood on end, my heart pounding and breath becoming rapid. The flashlight beam wavered in the darkness, threatening to go out at any moment. I didn't dare go near the crack again and turned to leave the basement. Just then, I heard heavy, slow footsteps coming from upstairs, as if someone was deliberately making noise. I knew I shouldn't hesitate and needed to get out of the house quickly. However, the footsteps grew closer, and I realized there might be more than one person. In the darkness, I felt an intense threat approaching. Clutching the flashlight, I looked around, trying to find a safe escape route. I decided to go back to the first floor and find an opportunity to escape from there. As I cautiously climbed the stairs, the footsteps suddenly stopped. The entire house fell into an eerie silence, with only my breathing echoing in the air. I shone the flashlight around and discovered muddy footprints on the floor, leading straight to my bedroom. A chill ran down my spine, and I decided to call the police. But my phone had no signal, as if some force was blocking it. Feeling isolated and desperate, I knew I had to rely on myself to escape the danger. I returned to the living room, trying to signal for help through the window, but the wind and rain outside swallowed my voice completely. The footsteps resumed, clearer this time. I hid in the corner of the living room, holding my breath, listening as the footsteps approached. Suddenly, the living room window was smashed open, and a cold wind mixed with rainwater poured in. I quickly closed the window, but the footsteps had already stopped at the living room door. I decided to face the unknown threat. Returning to the basement, I found an iron bar for protection. Then, I cautiously moved toward the bedroom, the footsteps growing louder and closer. Just as I reached the bedroom door, it was kicked open, and a dark figure lunged at me. Instinctively, I swung the iron bar, striking the figure. A scream of pain followed, and the figure fell to the ground. I quickly shone the flashlight on the fallen body, discovering it was a stranger, his face twisted with anger and pain. He held a knife, clearly intending to harm me. I felt a surge of intense fear, but more than that, a mix of anger and helplessness. I swung the iron bar again, hitting him with all my strength until he stopped moving. Gasping for breath, my heart still racing, I shone the flashlight around, ensuring there were no more intruders before finally relaxing a bit. At that moment, the power suddenly came back on, lighting up the entire house. I heard police sirens approaching, and I finally breathed a sigh of relief. The police quickly arrived and took control of the intruder. After investigating, they found that he was an escaped convict hiding in the nearby forest, seeking refuge in my house during the storm. The police took the intruder away and reassured me. I felt a wave of relief, but the fear hadn't completely dissipated. After the police left, I checked every corner of the house, ensuring no other threats remained. Then I sat on the couch, reflecting on what had just happened, my heart still pounding with lingering fear. Although the police had taken the intruder away, the terror of that night was deeply etched in my mind. I checked all the windows and doors, making sure they were securely locked. Then I lay in bed, trying to calm down. But every time I closed my eyes, the dark figure and his knife would appear in my mind. I knew it would take time to recover, but that night's experience was like a nightmare, constantly reminding me that unexpected dangers could arise at any time. I decided to move out of the house and find a safer place to live. Although the threat had been eliminated, the terror of that night stayed with me. Every time there was a thunderstorm, I couldn't help but recall the dark figure and his slow, approaching footsteps. The fear and helplessness I felt were unforgettable. I realized that no matter how peaceful life seemed, there would always be sudden storms, and the best I could do was to protect myself when they came. I moved out of that old house and found a safer place to live, but I still felt uneasy whenever it rained. That experience made me more vigilant and aware of the importance of staying calm and courageous in the face of danger. I decided to learn some self-defense techniques to better protect myself in the future. Although the terror of that night was unforgettable, it also made me stronger. Life is always full of unknowns and challenges, and all I can do is face every stormy night with strength and determination.